Today, we're going to get into something quiet, something you've probably felt but maybe couldn't quite name. It's about that weird tension that can fill a room when just one person seems to be operating on their own frequency. We're going to try and understand why that happens.
I mean, really think about it for a second. You're in a meeting, maybe at a family dinner, or just hanging out with friends. Everything's flowing, everyone's kind of vibing together. And then you feel it. One person isn't being difficult, they're not arguing, they're just there. And their presence alone seems to shift the entire energy of the group.
That feeling, it's incredibly familiar to most of us. And that's where we're going to start. We're not talking about some big, dramatic fight. This is about something way more subtle, a familiar, unspoken tension.
It really does feel like a kind of friction, doesn't it? You can't put your finger on it, but it's there. You can almost feel the group subtly working around that person, or maybe even against them. It's this resistance hanging in the air that nobody ever talks about.
So, what is actually going on under the surface? Well, to get to the bottom of that feeling, we have to look at the invisible rules that really run the show in any group.
There's a core concept in psychology that explains this perfectly. It's called group homeostasis. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Groups act like living things. And like any living thing, they naturally try to keep things stable and predictable. They have their own balance, and they will fight to keep it.
And that really is the heart of it all. See, a group isn't just a bunch of individuals, it's an interconnected system. And the number one goal of that system, usually totally unconscious, is to keep itself going, just as it is. Anything different feels like a threat to its very survival.
So, how do they do it? How does a group keep itself so stable? Well, it happens in two main ways. First, there's norm alignment. That's just everyone agreeing to the unwritten rules of behavior. And second, and this is the one we're really going to focus on, emotional dependency loops. This is that constant, subtle back and forth of approval that keeps people connected.
This brings us to a really crucial part of the whole dynamic. Think of approval as a kind of currency. It's the money that keeps the group's economy running smoothly. You know, we often look at approval seeking and think it's a sign of weakness or insecurity, but inside a group system, it actually has a really important job. When we look for validation from others and when we give it back, we're constantly confirming the group's rules and making our bonds stronger. It's basically the glue. So what happens when someone just doesn't use this currency? This is where the independent mind comes into the picture, not as an enemy, but just as someone who doesn't need to make those transactions. Okay, look at these two modes side by side. On the one hand, you have emotional dependency. It's all about reinforcing those group bonds by looking for validation outside yourself. But on the other hand, you have emotional self-regulation. This person gets their validation from within. They're not looking for the group's approval, and because of that, they don't reinforce the bonds. They actually, without trying, expose them. And this is the part that is so important to get. The disruptive person isn't doing anything to the group. The friction is caused by what they're not doing. They're not playing the game. It's their simple lack of needing the group's approval that throws a wrench in the works. And that lack of need on an unconscious level gets registered by the group as a threat. But a threat to what exactly? This isn't about right or wrong. The resistance is a gut reaction to a loss of influence. It's about the group losing its power to manage its own members. See, when someone doesn't need what the group offers emotionally, they can't be influenced by the group's main tool, which is giving or taking away approval. So the system sees this person as a glitch, a bug in the code. And its first instinct is to try and fix that glitch, to correct the deviation and bring them back in line. So when you boil it all down, the big takeaway is this. Your independence isn't an attack, but to a system that's built on everyone needing each other, it feels like one. Just by being yourself, you quietly introduce a bit of chaos. And that leaves us with one final thought to sit with. It's a completely different way to think about what it means to be an outsider. The biggest challenges to a group's power don't always come from a loud fight. Sometimes the most powerful challenge is quiet. It's the simple and, for the group, deeply unsettling act of not needing their approval to know who you are.